If you think osteoporosis is something you only worry about when you're in your 60s or 70s or 80s, this episode might surprise you because bone density, it actually peaks in our 20s. And by your 30s, you're either maintaining the bone you've built or you are slowly losing it. We are talking all about bone health for moms and how nutrition and strength training today impacts your bones decades from now. Enjoy today's episode. Feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, or like you've lost yourself in the postpartum chaos? Whether you're 4 weeks postpartum, 2 years in, or done having babies, you deserve to feel like yourself again. Hey mama, I'm Val, a functional sports dietitian, postpartum fitness coach, and a mama who understands exactly what you're going through. Welcome to the Strong and Nourished Mama podcast, where you'll find simple, science-backed strategies to heal your core, rebuild strength, and restore your energy without the overwhelm. If you're ready to go from depleted to strong, nourished, and unstoppable, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hey mama, welcome back to the Strong and Nourished Mama podcast. I'm your host, Val, sports dietitian, strength coach, and fellow mama. And this podcast is all about helping you feel strong, nourished, and energized in motherhood without extreme diets or unrealistic routines. Last week, we talked about meal planning and building structure around nutrition. Today, we're zooming out a bit and we're talking about something that is consistent with fueling and strength training and how they directly support your bones. And I know when it comes to bone health, it's probably not something that's on your radar or something that you're thinking about regularly. But the truth is, the habits that we build in our 30s, even in our 20s, 30s, and 40s, they play a huge role in how strong our bones are decades later when you go into perimenopause, postmenopause, in your 50s, your 60s, and beyond. But before we get into today's episode, if you've been trying to piece together nutrition advice, workouts, and wellness tips from social media or just other things that you've seen online, and you're tired of guessing, that's exactly why I created the Strong, Nourished, and Energized Mom method. In this group coaching program, we build a clear structure for strength training, recovering, whether you're 2 weeks postpartum, a year, 3+ years postpartum, to be able to focus on your core and your pelvic floor, fueling your body properly, improving your energy, and creating sustainable habits that actually fit mom life. Here is something that I want to share with you from one of the moms who've actually completed my program. Her name is Devin, and she said, before joining Val's program, I felt exhausted and overwhelmed trying to figure out nutrition and workouts on my own. Now I feel stronger, my energy is better, and I finally have a plan that fits my mom life. Thank you so much, Devin, for sharing that. And I'm so happy to be able to share this testimonial with you because this is just proof of what moms are getting from the program. If you're ready for that kind of clarity and support, you can learn more at wellnessbyval.com/program. All right, let's talk about bone health. And this topic is especially relevant to me because last week I stayed the night at my parents' so that my dad could take me to the airport. My husband was going to be with my little one in the morning. And so I stayed at my parents' house and we woke up super early so that I can go to the airport. And I tripped over this baby gate and I didn't see it. It was completely pitch black. I totally forgot about it. And I tripped over it and I fell on my hip on the hardwood floors and it hurt. It hurt so bad. And I fell right on my hip and I was like, oh man, that's going to bruise. And it didn't bruise my skin. Maybe it bruised the bone, but I knew that I was going to be okay. Even though I knew I was going to be sore for several days, I knew that I was going to be okay because strength training and nutrition support your bones. They support your bone health. And this is something that I've been prioritizing for years, especially because I'm going to be 34 this year. I'm especially thinking about what's going to happen in 10 years, 15, 20 years from now. When I'm in perimenopause and then eventually postmenopausal, I want to be able to support my bones. So this is something that I've been prioritizing and that's part of my lifestyle. And that moment reminded me how important this topic really is. Bone health isn't something most of us think about until something happens. whether maybe something happens to someone you know, someone in your family, or something happens to you. Maybe it's a fall, maybe it's an injury, a diagnosis. So if I wasn't prioritizing nutrition, if I wasn't prioritizing strength training and supporting my bones, that fall could have been really bad. It could have been really bad. It could have led to a fracture, and I wouldn't have been able to go on my trip. That would have taken recovery time and healing. It could have been worse. And so it's just something that I really want to talk about and bring to your awareness. What we do today has a huge impact with everything that we're doing. It doesn't mean that we have to be perfect. We talk about that a lot on the show. I don't want you to try to aim for this perfect lifestyle, because that doesn't exist. We want balance. But what we do today has a huge impact on how resilient your bones are, and your entire body really are later in life. And that's what we want. So let's talk about what's actually happening inside the body. Here's something most women are never told. We reach peak bone mass in our late 20s. Peak bone mass in our late 20s. So of course, what's going on in puberty and in our early 20s, that has an impact on our bone mass and of course, the future of our bones as well. Around 28 to 30, your skeleton has accumulated most of the bone that it will ever have. Okay, 28, 30. Think about if maybe you're around that age, maybe you're thinking back like, what was I doing when I was 28 or 30? I don't even remember. But I know that I was supporting my nutrition, my lifestyle, and that I was lifting weights. So hopefully that definitely has helped. Now, after that, we're either maintaining that bone that we built by 28, 30-ish. We're either maintaining that bone we built, or we are slowly losing it. Same goes for muscle. On average, women lose about 0.3 to 0.5% of bone density per year starting in their 30s. And that might not sound like a lot. Okay, so what, Val? That's 0.3 to 0.5%, but that's your bone density in your 30s. And hopefully you live a long, healthy, functional life, and we can go to, 80s and 90s and maybe beyond. If we're losing that much, that's going to have a significant impact on our health and our lifestyle. Now, over decades, that's going to add up. But when you think about perimenopause, when estrogen's going up and down, but then menopause, right? When you're no longer cycling, estrogen declines. Estrogen is so good for the bones. Estrogen is amazing, and we need her, right? And she cycles throughout each and every month. But after we're done cycling, estrogen is going to naturally decline. So bone loss can accelerate up to 1 to 2% per year. That's a significant increase from 0.3 to 0.5 to 1 to 2% per year. So the habits we build in our 30s and our 40s, they really matter. And even in our 20s, like I was talking about this with a coworker of mine, and she is in her 50s. She had her bone density scan done, which I highly recommend for any woman because I think that the average age or the age for insurance is 65, and that's too late. That's way, way, way too late. We want to do it a lot sooner. So she did it a few years ago when she was in her early 20s. We were just talking about it, and she was like, in my early 20s, I was teaching group fitness. I was high cardio, lots of running. I didn't prioritize strength training as much as I do now. So she's stronger now in her 50s than she was in her 20s, which is super cool. But that's just something to think about, right? Like when we're in our 20s, it's totally different, and maybe we can start supporting. So if you're listening to this and you are in your 20s, start supporting your nutrition, start supporting your muscle and your bones. If you're in your 30s and your 40s, it's not too late. I'm in my 30s. It's not too late. Now, this is important because these habits that we build during this time, they're going to influence fracture risk, mobility, independence later in life. That's what we want. At the end of the day, at the end of our lives, that's what matters, right? Being able to have a healthy, happy, independent life where we are functional adults. And really, that number on the scale, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. When we're talking about that period of our lives, We're really wanting to make sure that we're independent, functional human beings, that we have the mobility and the strength to live our life. And hopefully our fracture risk is low. So if we do fall, the fracture risk is low. Otherwise, that can lead to other things and other complications. So here's something that a lot of people don't know, or they just don't think about. They don't realize bone is an organ. Bone is living tissue. Bone is living tissue and it responds to stimulus. So we're not helpless. No matter where you are in your journey, no matter which decade you're in, you're not helpless. I think a lot of women believe that bone health just means calcium. Just take your calcium. You got to have lots of dairy to get your calcium to support your bones. Or they assume that walking is enough. Like, oh, I walk. I walk every day. I walk 3 miles. I walk 6 miles. That's amazing. Keep walking. Walking is fantastic. I don't want you to stop that. But it's not something that's going to really stimulate the bones enough, right? Is it something that we can start with? Yes, for sure. Or some people think about like bone health, osteopenia, osteoporosis. This is something that we'll worry about later, but at that point it could be too late. Bone health is influenced by a combination of things. Strength training. And you can think of your time in the gym lifting heavy weights. You can also think of your time outside of the gym. So you lifting heavy boxes, you gardening, picking up and moving things, life. That can be strength training as well. But it's nice to be able to get into the gym, your garage gym, wherever you're at, to be able to lift external load. And we're going to talk about why that is. Adequate protein, making sure we're eating enough protein, overall nutrition, of course, energy availability, and key minerals. So we're going to dive into all of these. What I often see today is women who are doing a lot of cardio, under eating, avoiding carbs, avoiding fat, not strength training consistently. Like you've been on social media, you know, skinny is back. As much as we don't want it back, it's back. And we have to kind of like fight against that trend. I don't know if that's a trend or not, but like that's not something we want. Because we want to be able to support our bones, our health, so that we can play with our kids as they grow older. We can do all these amazing things. We can play with our grandkids and, again, be functioning humans and functioning adults. The combination of excessive cardio, under eating, avoiding food groups altogether, and not strength training or not strength training consistently, that combination doesn't build bone. It actually does the opposite. So let's first start with exercise. Let's start with how exercise actually impacts the bone. When we do resistance training, where you're lifting external loads, which you can definitely start with your body weight. That's a great place to start if you're not already exercising. Start with body weight, and then of course working on mobility and all of the technique, being able to brace the core and control intra-abdominal pressure, things that we've talked about on the show before, and something that I really help moms with in my program. In week 1, we're learning how to breathe and control intra-abdominal pressure. And when moms first start that, they're like, Val, I know how to breathe. What are you talking about? And I tell them, no, like go through the program. Let's take this step by step, because it's totally different when you're lifting external load. When you're resistance training and you have this external load, whether it's a back squat, a body weight squat, a goblet squat, whatever it is, you have to be able to control intra-abdominal pressure. You have to be able to move and breathe at the same time. So when we do resistance training, what we're doing is we're actually applying mechanical load to the skeleton. Remember, our bones, that is an organ and it's active tissue. Now that stress, that mechanical load to the skeleton is going to stimulate bone cells. The bone cells are called osteocytes. These osteocytes are going to act like sensors inside the bone when they get this mechanical load. They detect that there is mechanical stress, and that stress is going to trigger a cascade of signals that stimulate bone remodeling and formation. This is what we want. So when you have external load, whether you're starting with body weight, progressing to dumbbells and barbells and other things that you're using, that is mechanical stress to the bone and to the body, of course, right? You're going to be building muscle in that process. And then that's going to trigger this process to start to stimulate bone remodeling and formation. So in simple terms, when you lift weights and you work on progressive overload, so You start to lift heavier weights over time. It's all relative to you. Your bones get the message that they need to become stronger. And when I say lift heavy weights, you always have your starting place. And this is what we talk about a lot in my program as well. You have your starting place, you work on progressive overload because that's going to also support your metabolism, your energy, your strength, your muscles, your bones. And so that's something we really want to focus on. Walking is wonderful. Walking is wonderful. We need to move more during the day. We're not doing enough of it. It's great for cardiovascular health. We were created to move. And of course, you could do other cardio types of exercises. I'm not saying you can't do that, but I think we need to start figuring out ways to be able to weave these things together. And if you're training for something specific, like a marathon, guess what? You should still be doing resistance training. We should still be focusing on mobility and technique and balance. All of those things are going to support the bone. Progressive resistance training is going to provide a much stronger stimulus for bone compared to just walking. Okay. This is one of the reasons that strength training is so powerful for long-term health. Just one of like a million reasons. So that's the first thing, exercise, and kind of figuring out what your starting place is and how to build from there. And this is something that we talk about and build on in the program. Now, how does nutrition support bone? Let's talk about nutrition because it's not just about calcium. Yeah, calcium is important, of course, yes. But from research, protein is going to make up about 50% of bone volume and roughly 1/3 of its mass. Protein makes up about 50% of bone volume and roughly 1/3 of its mass. So if someone tells you protein isn't important for bone health, excuse me, yes, it is. Let me share this podcast episode with you. That means bone is built on a protein matrix, right? There's so many things that are going into this. It's not just one thing. So we have the exercise. Now we're talking about the nutrition piece. And minerals, in addition to your protein, your amino acids, minerals like calcium are going to deposit onto that structure, that protein matrix. And that's important. So if protein intake is too low, the body cannot effectively build or maintain bone tissue. Here's the thing. You need protein, amino acids, the building blocks of protein, for literally everything inside the body. Then you ask your body to create a human. Then you ask your body to give birth and feed your baby and get back into exercise and train for a marathon or a CrossFit competition or a high rocks or just, stay consistent with your exercise. We need to make sure we're getting in enough protein. If protein intake is too low, like I said, body cannot effectively build or maintain bone tissue or muscle tissue. So this is why it matters. If we know body composition, we know lean body mass, I recommend 1 to 1.4 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass. Lean body mass. So this is just a side note, if you get your body composition done, which you can easily do at universities in the exercise physiology lab, or some gyms have it. So when I'm working with clients who are local, I share with them gyms that they can go to be able to get their body composition done. They're going to, of course, see fat mass. You're going to, of course, see skeletal muscle mass. So that's your muscle on the bone, your skeletal muscle, think biceps, glutes, hamstrings, and so on. And then you have lean body mass. Lean body mass is everything but fat mass. So it's including your skeletal muscle. It's including your bone. It's including your organs and fluid. So because you need protein for all of those things, that's why we have the recommendation of 1 to 1.4 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass. So if you have 100 pounds of lean body mass, the minimum amount of protein you need is 100 grams. And I honestly think that most women, of course, depending how tall you are, right? Like if you're 4'8", then protein's probably going to be lower. But if you're a 5'6" female with a lean body mass of 90 pounds, I'm still going to have you get a minimum of 100 grams of protein a day because you're tall and we need to be able to support that lean body mass. We need to be able to support the muscle and we need to be able to support the bone. And that's just one of the reasons body composition testing can be helpful, okay? So that we can get those values. If not, then I have calculations and I work with you in the program to be able to figure out how much protein you need and what's realistic for you. Where's your starting place? How can we, build up something that's going to be realistic so that it can be helpful? Because that's going to allow us to be able to personalize this recommendation instead of just guessing or telling you, hey, you need 130 grams of protein. And you're like, well, how much am I getting right now? That's something that we talk about in the program. So exercise, nutrition. We're going to dive into the key minerals in a minute. I want to talk about energy availability first. This is huge. So when you think about energy availability, think about energy, calories, the calories that are on board for what you're asking of your body. Do you have enough gas in the tank to drive across the country? And if you don't, what are you doing? You're stopping at a gas station, right? We're going to be stopping at gas stations. We got to be fueling. Another dietitian who I admire, Ashley Koff, she actually calls them pit stops with anything. But when we're using the car analogy, you can think of that as well. So when we think of energy availability, how much energy do we have? How much gas do we have in the tank on board for what we're asking of our body? In other words, is there enough energy available for what you're doing? Now, I recently met with a client. She is 58 years old. She was recently diagnosed with osteoporosis, and she, by her doctor, was recommended to go speak to a dietitian to talk about ways to get in more calcium. That was actually the specific recommendation from the doctor to support her bones. Now, 58 is young. That is young for osteoporosis, and we're seeing osteopenia, and that's a thinning of bones. And then osteoporosis, we're seeing that in younger and younger people. So it's not just for people in their 80s. So that's why I want to talk about it now, especially if you are in your 20s, 30s, and 40s. And even if you are listening to this and you happen to be in your 50s or plus, these all still support your bone, and you can take this with you. So when we looked at her nutrition history, she's 58, recently diagnosed. The doctor is recommending to get in more calcium through her diet. When we looked at her nutrition history, she had been significantly under eating. And so looking at what she was eating, without actually putting it into a software, I could tell, like, okay, this is probably not enough. This is more than likely not enough. Definitely not enough protein, and definitely not enough calories. And so we talked about restriction. We talked about there's no purposeful restriction. And as I'm telling you, women and moms, a lot of the times there's unintentional under eating. Sometimes there's intentional under eating, but there's also that unintentional, right? You're not even thinking about it. You don't even realize that you're under eating, like I was describing about myself last summer. Now, what we talked about was trying to figure out ways to add in more nourishment, more nourishing foods back into her diet, so that we can get a variety of different things that are going to be able to support her overall health, of course, but support her bones. Now, something else that I always think about when I think about osteopenia and osteoporosis is when I was an undergrad studying exercise science and nutrition, I was volunteering with a sports dietitian at the University of New Mexico. Volunteering there for a couple years, worked with her with a variety of different athletes. And I remember the specific story. There was a cross-country athlete who was incredibly talented. She was amazing. And she had the opportunity to compete in the Olympics. She was that good of a runner. But she was diagnosed with osteoporosis. I think she was like 20. And she had to step away from competing to focus on her health. And I share these stories not to scare anyone, but to highlight something important. Chronic underfueling can affect bone health. It can affect our hormones, our relationship with food, so many things. Our bodies need the energy to maintain and rebuild tissue, and bone is part of that tissue. So we want to make sure that we're eating enough, especially if we are exercising. We're a busy mom, we're on the go. Or do we have these quick options available? Go back to that meal planning episode 89, to be able to figure out ways that you can integrate that into your life. Because as a mom, you're busy. You're on the go. From the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, you're probably exercising, maybe you're training for something. And so we want to make sure that we're eating enough, and of course, getting nourishing foods to be able to support our bone, our muscle, and everything. Again, it doesn't mean that you have to be restrictive in any way, that you can't eat this, you only can eat that. It's really just making sure that we have this balanced plate with enough on it. Now, let's dive into the key minerals and food sources so that you can really walk away and become aware of what you're eating and what you're adding to your diet. So along with protein and energy intake, minerals, of course, are going to play an important role, a very important role, and not only in bone health, but in everything across the body. Some key nutrients for bone health include calcium, vitamin D, magnesium, and vitamin K2. So calcium and magnesium are going to be your minerals. They're also electrolytes. So they're really important for muscular contraction and for getting fluid into the cells. Vitamin D and vitamin K are vitamins, of course, but they are your fat-soluble vitamins. So they're going to be stored in fat tissue. You also need fat when you're eating these foods, or especially if you're taking supplements, to be able to absorb these vitamins. So instead of thinking supplements first, which I think supplements are great if you have a third-party tested brand, so you actually know you're taking what the product is saying you're taking, and at the right dose, you're taking the therapeutic dose. And so this is something that we talk about in the program as well. But I really like to emphasize food sources, food first, because your supplements are just going to be that insurance policy. So let's talk calcium. Calcium, of course, can come from dairy. People will think of dairy, yogurt, but it's also going to be in sardines, tofu, and leafy greens. So there's a variety of different things there. So if someone is allergic to dairy, then maybe we can talk about tofu, sardines, leafy greens to be able to add those in. And then if, after logging a typical day, we look and we say, hey, calcium's still pretty low, and we have a increased risk of osteopenia, osteoporosis, like the client I was talking to who already has it, then we may need to supplement more than likely, especially if you already are diagnosed. Magnesium, my favorite mineral in the world ever, is found in foods like pumpkin seeds, almonds, beans, dark chocolate, greater than 70%, think that. And magnesium is a mineral that most people are going to be pretty low in. We've talked about this on the show before. Go listen to episode 77 where we dive into magnesium a lot more. So you can start to add in those foods. So let's say you do have dairy and you like yogurt. Maybe you have a Greek yogurt. There's lots of protein. Awesome. There's calcium. Great. Maybe we put some pumpkin seeds or almonds. Awesome. So then we can start to pair these things together and you're getting more than just these nutrients in those foods. Vitamin K2 is going to be found in fermented foods. So if you think of sauerkraut, kimchi, that can be something to add in. Of course, there's so many other options as well. Eggs and then certain dairy products. And vitamin D is going to come from sunlight mostly. So getting sun exposure first thing in the day, that's going to support your circadian rhythm. It's going to help you get that vitamin D. And then maybe after 15 minutes of sun exposure, you can put on sunscreen, right? But it's also going to be in fatty fish and then your fortified foods. And of course, all of these will be in supplements. Now, especially with vitamin D, you want to make sure that you first know your level and that you're taking the right amount. So a client that I was working with who has osteoporosis, her doctor gave her vitamin D level was 20. And I think her vitamin D supplementation was 3,000. And for someone with a very low vitamin D, like 20, we actually want anywhere from 8 to 10,000 IUs a day. Because it's a fat-soluble vitamin, you want to get your vitamin D checked every 3 to 6 months to be able to reassess, because again, it's going to hang out in the fat tissue. And then to help with absorption, you want to make sure that your vitamin D is paired with K2. So this is something I dive into deeper in the program and to be able to give you individualized support as well. So these nutrients, calcium, magnesium, K2, D, they're going to support the mineralization process that strengthens bone tissue. So that's very important. And when you start to pair these foods together, you're not only getting these amazing nutrients, you're getting other vitamins, other minerals, and then of course other benefits as well. Now, for moms who are breastfeeding or who have breastfed, there's another important piece to understand. I think a lot of the times moms are told to be mindful or to think about their bones if they are breastfeeding or if they plan to breastfeed. And sometimes that can scare moms into not breastfeeding. And I don't want that to be the case at all. Now, when you're breastfeeding, after you have your baby, it's a very high metabolic demand to recover and to be able to feed your baby. going to be a higher metabolic demand than when you were in your third trimester of your pregnancy. So this is why I do this work, because a lot of the times after moms have their babies, we're often neglected, and the baby, of course, is getting all the attention, rightly so. We have a brand new baby. We love our babe, but mom often is putting their health on the back burner. And I want to be able to support moms so that they can not only take care of their baby and connect with their baby, but take care of themselves as well. And that includes your bones. So during breastfeeding, the body, especially if we're underfueling, the body is going to be pulling calcium and other nutrients from bones to be able to support milk production and make sure you're giving baby what baby needs. So your body is very smart. You just had a baby. You start producing milk and you're feeding your baby. And if your body's like, man, we don't have enough calcium, we don't have enough of this nutrient on board, where are we going to get it from? Okay, pull from the muscle. We don't have enough amino acids. Pull from the bone. We don't have enough calcium. That's how things are going to work. So we really want to make sure that we're supporting ourselves first and foremost. Put on your own oxygen mask first, then help out your child, right? I just landed this morning, actually, from Anaheim, California, and the Southwest flight attendant was saying, be selfish, put on your mask first and then help. And that's exactly how we need to think about motherhood sometimes, is we have to be able to support ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, and that includes nutrition, before we can expect to help our family, right? Because if we're not helping ourselves, it's actually going to take away from our family. And that includes when you're feeding your baby. So this, of course, can lead to temporary decrease in bone density. And in that period, that early postpartum period, you're going to more than likely have muscle loss as well. That's something I definitely experienced. And once I really made sure, okay, I have my 3 balanced meals, I have my snacks, I'm hydrating, I'm making sure I'm getting in movement and focusing on all of that, then that definitely was reversed. And I started building muscle. And I know that when I'm doing that, I'm supporting my bone. In many women, bone density naturally rebuilds, and especially if we're eating enough and we're doing the things we need to, but especially after weaning. But during that period that you are breastfeeding, we have to make sure that we're getting enough nutrients so that you can support baby and give baby the milk with enough nutrients, but also yourself. Because then you're going to start to see things not only with bones, but skin and hair, nails. You're going to start to be like, man, why isn't my hair growing back? Like I thought I would be growing back already. Those are all things that we want to think about. Proper nutrition and strength training can help support that rebuilding process all across the motherhood journey. And that's really important. So it's not something to panic about. It's not something that should deter you away from breastfeeding. It's just, okay, hey, these things can probably happen. Let me make sure that I do X, Y, and Z, support my nutrition, my movement, so that I can mitigate that as much as possible. It's just simply another reminder of how important fueling and strength training are during motherhood. And this is one of the reasons that inside the Strong, Nourished, and Energized Mom method, we don't just focus on weight loss. Like, okay, it's time to get your body back. Heck no, we're not bouncing back. We have an entirely new body. We focus on building strength and fueling properly throughout all the stages, because when moms get stronger and nourish their bodies well, they're not only supporting their metabolism, their energy, they're also supporting long-term health, including bone health. So everything that we're doing now is going to influence our bones, our muscles, our overall health in years to come. If you're in your 30s, your 40s, and maybe you're thinking, I need to start thinking about this. I need to start thinking about my bones and way to support my bones and my overall body. This is your sign. This is your sign. You don't need any more information. You just need a clear path. And that's exactly what I help moms build. You can learn more about the Strong, Nourished, and Energized Mom Method program. It's my 8-week group coaching program. Head to wellnessbyval.com/program to learn more. And if this episode helped you, please share it with another mom who might need to hear it. Thanks so much, mama. Stay strong, stay nourished, and I'll see you next week. Hey mama, I hope you loved today's episode.
If you got something out of it or simply enjoyed listening, would you please take 30 seconds to share it with another mom who could use the support? And if you haven't yet, I would be so grateful if you could leave a quick review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you tune in. It truly means the world to me, and it helps the show reach more amazing moms like you. All right, time to go chase my toddler around, stay strong and nourished, and I'll be back on Monday with another episode. Talk soon.